morning. I'll be honest. I wonder if any of you are with me. This week has not gone according to plan. It has not gone as expected. I've already heard some amens. So I'm assuming you can relate to weeks like this. Maybe you've had a month like that. Maybe you're like it's even been a year. Oh my goodness, I just said that. I think I just quoted the Friends theme song. I can tell you that my 2020 has not gone as expected. Don't get me wrong, my new year has not been bad. But have you ever made these plans and things just don't go the way you want them to? You think you're going a certain direction, and then it just suddenly pivots to a different way than you were thinking it would be or it should be. That's what the past few weeks have been like for me, if I'm being honest. Again, it's not been bad. Just the opposite. At times it's been quite wonderful, challenging, but worth it. Today, if you're up for it, that's what I'd like to talk about. Because this week especially, I'm learning that I can make all the plans in the world, but my course in life, I would say our course in life, can suddenly change. So I want to take a look at our text today. From Hebrews 12, verse 1 and 2. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. Now, we've already read this verse, so don't get ahead of me because this metaphor is pretty much going to write itself out. And this may not be the first time you've looked at this passage before. You may have heard these sermons many, many times. But stay with me, because at the end of this, I want you to run your race. At the end of this, I need you to run your race. We need you to run your race. God wants you to run your race because his world is watching and it needs more runners. I said my 2020 hasn't gone quite as expected, but one thing I had planned on doing at the turn of the new year was I got to attend the National Conference on Youth Ministries. I got to go there the first week in January, and for me, it's such an amazing and uplifting time. It's a great convention with fellow brothers and sisters who are serving youth and children in the brotherhood across the nation. For me, I love it because it's like Jumpstart for youth ministers. This is the second time I got to go, and these verses were our theme. The whole point of the convention was to look before us. I didn't realize then how this theme of running our race and what lies before us would impact the first 2 months of my year like it has. So let's just start with first things first. I am not a runner. Okay? That's not me. I mean, come on, look at me. But at the conference, I got to hear from many people who were runners. One of them, one of our keynote speakers you may know, I got the pleasure to hear Mike Cope. How many of you know Mike Cope? If you've been at Rocketdyne any length of time, of course we know Mike Cope. His parents were founding members of this church, Ken and Ann. I heard Mike speak about some of the races that he's ran, I should say. He'll be the first to admit he's never won any of them, but he's ran them. He's ran in several marathons. He even did so well running in marathons that he got to go and run in the Boston Marathon. We heard about that. But there was one particular story that stood out to me, and it was about him running a triathlon. Today, if you don't mind, I want to share an excerpt from his sermon that he gave at those lectureships, because I want you to hear him tell a story about a particular triathlon. I did get permission from his mom to share this, and I said, do you think Mike would mind if I play this? And she said, well, I'm his mom, and I say it's okay. So I want you to listen to this clip from Mike Cope.
It was a few years ago. I did a long race. A bunch of us jumped into Table Rock Lake and swam over a mile, and then we jumped on our bikes and biked 56 miles, and then we ran a half marathon. 3 laps of just over 4 miles in driving rain in the Ozark Mountains. My dad was still alive at the time. My mom and dad came out to the last part of it. But because of the driving rain, they set out of the canopy. My dad was in advanced stages of Parkinson's at the time. And every time I ran by, I saw him over there. But the last time I was coming, when I thought I was going to die, for a long ways, I saw my dad coming out into the driving rain with his walker. Get soaked. And he got right out on the street where he nearly could have been hit because he's lost his voice from Parkinson's. And he just explodes. Bring it home, son. And there was a kind of thrill. Actually, to be honest, my legs didn't get any stronger. I'd love to say, and I won the race. No. No, I barely survived. But now that he's gone, his voice remains. It stays as a goodness to me.
Ken was Mike's example. And I love how Mike shared that his dad's voice remains. It's like Ken is forever yelling and cheering, bring it home, son. Bring it home. And I don't think Mike is alone in that. We get emotional here from the very beginning, but really these verses give us no choice, but ought to, because it says right here, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. I believe we're all surrounded by these witnesses. Are you thinking of them now? We all have people in our lives who took time to invest in us, believe in us, cheer for us. We have that fan section cheering us on and encouraging us, rooting for us. We have that support team prepping us, pouring into us, and teaching us, molding us. And what I love about the story Mike told was what really he didn't mention. I don't believe Mike just became a runner. His father, Ken, was also a runner, and he also appeared at the Boston Marathon a few times, if I'm right. There was training there. There was support. There was mentorship. We focused on this verse in Hebrews 12, but I think it's important to go back and look at the chapter in Hebrews 11. In Hebrews 11, we see the author make a list of all of these Old Testament heroes, and we sometimes call them the heroes of faith. Men and women who kept looking forward. They kept looking forward to the day the Messiah would come, the day Jesus would be here. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, even Rahab. These are part of the cloud of witnesses. These make up the hall of faith. I think they're figuratively in sight, cheering us on to the same victory and life of faith that they obtained. And I find that inspiring. These pillars of the Bible, they fought the good fight with faith. They've run their race. But the story doesn't stop there, does it? Because we look at these verses, and it's not just about our cloud of witnesses. It goes on. Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. If you've chose to follow Christ, you're in the race, whether you like it or not. I mean, and I get it. I don't even like walking fast, let alone running. But we're in the race, aren't we? And I love how in this text, it builds us up, talking about these people we've had in our lives to love and support us. But then it quickly pivots and said, flat out, there are things that are going to happen in this life that will try to hold us up, that are going to try to hinder us. Anger, guilt, self-doubt, stubbornness, resentment, pride. And folks, that's just my personal list. I don't know about yours. Why does the author of Hebrews tell us to cast off these hindrances as well as the sin that trips us up? Why does he say that? We just got to keep reading. Because we're called to run with perseverance the race marked out before us. Again, as I said earlier, the church needs you to run your race. The church needs me to run my race. Your brothers and sisters in this room need you to run your race. I had mentioned earlier that this theme had seemed to be dominating 2020. I want to show you a picture of my friend, Rick Odell. I got to go to a conference with him back in January. He's the one in the middle. Rick Odell this year at conference won the Wally Wilkinson Legacy Award for his service in youth ministry. This year marks 31 years as a youth minister. And he's still going. He's the full-time youth minister at the West Ark Church of Christ in Fort Smith. I did some math and I figured I would have to be your youth minister till I was 64 years old to accomplish 31 years in youth ministry. But Rick has really become a great friend over the past 16 months that I've known him. Rick fills a van every year full of youth ministers, and he takes us to wherever the national conference is that year. And it is a fun time. I really mean it. Can you imagine a van full of youth ministers? Whatever you're thinking, multiply it times 3. This week, Rick was one of the reasons I got off track and my course veered suddenly and unexpectedly. I say it was unexpected, but just follow along. Because Rick, there's one thing. Rick is passionate about community. He's passionate about supporting one another. He loves being around other youth ministers. So back in January, as this conference wrapping up, he kind of laments that there's not any other group of youth ministers in the Fort Smith area that he can meet with regularly. So week goes by, we're back from conference. I'm excited, we've hit the ground running. I get a text from Rick. Little Rock is going to have an area gathering of youth ministers here in February, this past Thursday. 5, 6 people jump on board. Yeah, let's go. I say, sure, I'm willing to go, let's go. Because you see, that was back in January. I was younger then, I was eager. Wednesday night, Nathaniel Thomas and Brianna, Megan Ryan's here, they can all attest that I said this. I said, I'm supposed to be going to an area-wide meeting tomorrow, and I think I'm going to cancel because I had to prepare for this. I had to prepare, this epic presentation and sermon. So I tell him that, and it feels like just a second later, I get this text. I guess it's just you and me in the morning, assuming you're still coming. I did not. I was going to have to cancel, but of course, this is what I say. You got it. So here I go, driving down to Alma, Arkansas. I meet him in Alma, then I hop in his red truck. We head another 2 hours down to Little Rock for a shrimp boil. If you've never been to a good old-fashioned shrimp boil, I'm assuming that's a Mardi Gras thing, I've been told. It was awesome. So imagine in our gym, tables set up with newspaper lined all over them, and they bring in this big pot of shrimp and potatoes and corn on the cob and onions, and they just pour it on the table. No plates, no silverware. There's bowls of butter, some Cajun seasoning. You just go to town. I got to eat a ton of shrimp, and it was delicious. I sat next to the cook. His name was Joe. He taught me how to quick pill shrimp. Huge pile of shrimp crusts. I don't know what you... Huge pile of shrimp, but across the table, there's a girl there named Rachel, and her pile was much bigger than mine. Paled in comparison. She was a pro. We fellowship. We hear a great lesson. And then Rick says, hey, by the way, I'm not planning on going home. Right after this, granted, he's given me a ride. I'm 2 hours from my Jeep. I'm not planning on going home. I'm actually wanting to go see my great-aunt Wanda. She lost her husband a couple months ago. Just want to check in with her real quick. And then I want to go see if I can find my old youth minister. I had a 4 o'clock appointment that I needed to get back to the building for. And then I had another very important appointment after with Eli. He was expecting me to pick him up when I was done with my 4 o'clock appointment. And so you know what I say. Okay. We go, we say hi to his great aunt Wanda, who was an absolute delight. We go looking for Rick's old youth minister. We can't find him. Half an hour later, we're still trying to figure out where he's at. But you see, he needed us. He actually needed Rick more than he needed me. I was just tagging along. But you see, Rob's son just got into a car accident that same day. He's fine. Rob's son is fine, but the car is totaled. And they're working. This is why it took Rick so long to get a hold of Rob. They were trying to figure out how we can get 2 cars to our son who needs a vehicle. They were waiting on a ride. We pull up, and when Rick showed up, Rob immediately teared up. And he said how good it was to see him. So for about 20 minutes, I got to see this award-winning youth minister of 31 years reminisce with his youth minister that he had back in 1975. Smiles filled the room that once was filled with worry and stress Now there was peace, there was calm. It was great to see because it gave me a glimpse of this race that we're all called together to run. We need you to run your race, and we need you to support others who are running theirs. We need you to cheer for others along the way. Therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out before us. How? By fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. Yes, we have a wonderful section of believers to cheer us on, but more importantly is the one we have running and had run the race ahead of us, and that is Jesus. Hebrews 2:17 says, "For this reason, Jesus had to be made like them, fully human in every way, in order that he," again meaning Jesus, "might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people." In Hebrews 4:15, we do not have a high priest who's unable to empathize with our weaknesses. We have one who has been tempted in every way just as we are, yet he did not sin. Jesus wasn't immune to the same problems and hindrances that we had, just the opposite. He was tempted just like us, and he kept running his race. In fact, he won the race. He won the race for all of us. And if we continue reading past these two verses, we'll see that for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Jesus paved the way. Jesus set the course map. Jesus endured it all for us. Jesus ran his race, and he now sits at the right hand of God. And Jesus is still there, waiting for us to run our race. He's still there, cheering us on. Bring it home. Jesus wants you to run your race. Jesus wants you to persevere. Jesus just wants you. You know what? I need you too. Let's run in this race together. Let's run our race and keep our eye on the prize. Let's keep our eyes on the perfecter of our faith, and let's run and not grow weary. Let's run to the Lord. If I can come up alongside you in any way in your run, if we can help in any way, please come. Run up here. Run up here as we stand and sing.